Alright, this video is going to be about dimpling your barrel for a gas block. I know those who've seen some of the FUD groups telling you don't need to do this, or they recommend some shitty product that has some piece of plastic that goes in the gas block, falls off, you knock the thing out with a rod, all this nonsense. But the answer is something like this. This is an SLR jig. This costs about as much as a lesser expensive gas block. I think I paid $25 for this when it was on sale a couple years ago. But anywho, the reason why it's important, well, if you want your rifle to function, the gas block has to be aligned with the port in the barrel. If it fails to do that, you immediately induce a malfunction because there's no gas to flow through to operate the action of the rifle. There's a little forgiveness in the gas block. The port and the gas block's, roughly twice the size of the average size port in the barrel here, but you still need to dimple the barrel, for one, to keep it from shifting once it is installed, but two, it also just makes it 100 times easier to align. Even if you were to find a method to secure it without needing a dimple, like pinning, you still need some way to align the gas block properly. But and this isn't knocking pinning. I mean, if you can pin it yourself, go ahead. It's probably the most secure method if done properly. But most people don't have a drill press or don't feel comfortable drilling through, possibly a $400 or maybe even more dollar barrel. So dimpling's the next best option. It's what BCM does, Psionic, Sons of Liberty Gun Works. I have most of my low pro gas blocks are dimpled. I don't shoot competitively or anything, but never had one shift. As long as you use that in conjunction with the proper thread locker, they just don't back out. They don't shift. Anyhow, again, this goes back to barrel dimpling. A $25, $30 jig after shipping will save you tons of headache. Pretty much makes it foolproof. The SLR kit comes with a gas block. I think the dimple tool here, I think the newer ones have 5 sides on them in case you want to dimple both holes, which requires you to know the spacing between the screws on your gas block. I don't think it's required. You just simply do the one that's 180 degrees from the gas port. That's adequate enough. The other one doesn't have to be dimpled. If you want to do that, by all means, the jigs are provisioned for that, pending your gas block has the spacing to align with the spacing on the jig. But again, the one directly under the gas port, that's the most important one. That one will align the gas block with the gas port, pending everything's actually manufactured correctly. But also, it'll tell you pretty much by aligning it once you run the set screw in, if the gas block was provisioned to accept an end cap, or if it's a lot of the newer ones now are machined to kind of go up against the shoulder if your barrel actually has a gas block shoulder. But that dimple will also let you kind of know that. Anyway, SLR jig comes with 4 components. 1, the instructions, which are pretty self-explanatory, and 2, a set screw here. This set screw is pointed. This is the one that will actually index off of the gas port. This point here drops down into the gas port and centers the jig onto the barrel. The second one is your drill guide. It is just a socket head cap screw that is bored through the middle. It's provisioned for a 5/32 drill bit. Does not come included, but I mean, Brownell sells a 5/32 jobber bit for like $2-3. Ace Hardware sells these things. It's a common size you can pick up just about anywhere. I would suggest getting something that's not a total piece of shit. A garbage drill bit, on a harder surface treated barrel. I don't know, I've not had one because I don't buy shitty drill bits, but may break off. But these drill bits from Brownell seem to do just fine. And again, they go straight through the set screw here. As far as depth goes, you'll see some some of the newer BCMs have almost an egg-shaped hole where they use a much wider bit. I've even seen a few BCM barrels where it's done post barrel finishing, some done before and the barrel finished afterwards. But depth, I kind of like to go until it's dished out, and then go down until it's 1 or 2 thousandths below the surface. just to create a nice little bowl shape in there with a little shoulder on it to ensure that your set screw is going to go down in there, aligned properly, and have a good bite on the barrel, and prevent any type of side-to-side shifting or any type of movement. I know most people are going to cover these things with rails, so an impact directly to the gas block is probably not very probable, but that's my personal preference. As far as drill depth goes, you can get a drill stop that locks onto the drill bit, so you go down, the stop will actually stop on top of there, so you cannot drill any deeper. For me, I've done enough to where I just kind of drill and eyeball it and clean out the shavings and just go with that. But anyway, I'm going to kind of show you how easy it is. Tools required. This will actually, once it's secured, it has flats on the side that you can actually chuck this up in a vise by itself. That's great and all. I've never been really comfortable with that. It's a very small surface to clamp against. I've had them clamp down and put a little pressure on it and had the barrel shift. Not a big fan of that. If it shifts wrong while you're drilling, you can run the risk of snapping a drill bit. But for me, these are just $10 vise jaws you can get from Home Depot online. And they're just meant for pipes of various use, but they do end up holding a barrel pretty solid. You can put the needed pressure from a drill on there. It's not going anywhere. But with that being said, you know, one of these sides has a little dimple in it to tell you which side the muzzle is. Again, that also indicates, you know, in this particular jig, if it's 0.40 or 0.45 screw spacing. I don't really care about that. I just care about getting the single dimple 180 degrees from the gas port. So on this, I'm just going to make sure the muzzle side is towards the muzzle, run it up on the gas block journal. One other note, they have a few jigs. You know, you can get your 625 or your 3/4 gas block journal, as well as some of the larger journal sizes on some of the heavier profile barrels. But your most common you're going to run into are the 3/4 and the 625 gas block journals. But anyway, you run this thing onto the gas block or the gas block journal. I kind of center the I'll bring the camera over, but I take the gas block jig and dimple jig and I center it over the gas port. I will take my set screw, tapered set screw here, and run it down. Holding the phone with one hand, bear with me. But anyhow, it's going to run down. You just take a hex key here, and if you are mindful, you have to have a little sense here. You'll actually feel the tip of the set screw go down in the block. So if it's kind of canted, as you tighten it, you'll notice that the block kind of shifts over and aligns. You don't have to gorilla tight this thing. It's not going anywhere. I just run it snug. That's it. It's not going anywhere. Okay. Alright, now that the jig's on there, let's take my vise here. I'm going to roll the barrel over. This is actually where the dimple's going to occur. Tighten it back down, it's secure. I'm going to put the drill guide and the hole closest to the receiver. This is where we're going to drill the hole at. You can use a drill press. It's really unnecessary with a drill guide like this. It's deep enough, you're not going to really run into any alignment problems. As far as lubing the bit, I don't even think that's necessary on this either. Again, you're doing a very shallow dimple here. You're not going, you want to just power through and go through the bore of the barrel. But just go directly down into the barrel here once it's lined up. But we'll go ahead and get that drill lined up. On this, you don't have to tighten it all the way down with a hex key. It's basically use it like a thumb screw. Just run it down until it's touching the barrel a little bit snug, so it doesn't back out on you. And you're going to want to go straight down with the barrel. If it's your first time doing this, don't go crazy on pressure, but also, just the drill weight's not going to do it. So you just want to have a light to medium pressure until you get a feel for how it's going to cut through the barrel steel. Some do cut easier. This is a stainless steel Noveski barrel, so it'll probably drill a little easier. but you can drill it. I like to take this guide back out and blow the chips back out of it. You're going to want to do that before you slide the jig off anyway, otherwise it's going to scar the barrel if a chip gets hung up under the jig and you're dragging it off of there. But again, we're just going to continue until we get to the dimple of a desired depth. Check it again. I'm going to go a little deeper. Also, clean your drill bit off. Now, I'm going to show you this on the camera. You can look down in there. It's the depth I want. It's got that just tiny little shoulder. I'll show you once I actually pull the jig off. And that is all you need. Again, if you're gas block, if you want to, you can go ahead and dimple this side. I've done them, but you know, even if you measure it and the gas block spacing is what you think it is, I've even seen some variation between the spacing on these, even if they were claimed to have been you know, the exact spacing as the jig here. And so when you tighten the back one, the front one's not 100% centered. So the juice is not worth the squeeze for me. I just do the one. It's secure enough. And you know, again, with that, a proper knurled tip set screw and 272 Loctite with the screws tightened appropriately, it's not going anywhere. I don't know if it picks up well on the camera, but as you can see, it's a nice defined dimple. It's got just a, you know, just a 1 or 2 thousandths shoulder there going down below the surface. This will make installing a gas block very easy. It'll make sure it's properly aligned. The rifle will function just fine, you know, pending the rest of the things not total garbage. All right, the next important part of the installation is making sure you have the correct set screws in your gas block. I got this box off McMaster. It's 100 set screws. These are knurled tip set screws. They're different than your normal cut or flat bottom ones, but these are knurled. These have a good bite. It's almost like a serrated lock washer to keep them from backing out. So between this and the proper red Loctite, which will be the BCM method here, yes, 271 gets recommended and it's fine as well. 272 is the BCM method. That's the one I've just used always. This is just not as easy to find. None of my local stores have this, and you got to buy this larger bottle. This will last the home builder literally until the bottle starts to kind of solidify and go bad. This will last you virtually forever. But you don't use that much. But this is the Loctite I use. So a knurled tip set screw. Let me get a piece of paper here to get the camera to focus. But the knurled tip set screw right there needs to have that type of point. Those serrations there lock into the barrel steel and help provide that mechanical bite to keep the screw from backing out. And as you can see, this gas block came with these, so I don't have to use the ones from McMaster. But the next thing you want to do here is degrease the threads on the screw and the block. The cheapest, fastest drying method is just a plain old can of contact cleaner. Doesn't take much. Just typically small little spritz there is enough. It dries super fast, so you don't really have to worry about blowing it off with air or anything or any of that nonsense. But a nice little spritz there. Then I do the gas block as well. I mean, you can get in there and scrub these holes, but I find that this is adequate enough to degrease the threads so that the Loctite adheres properly. But once those are dried out and the contact cleaner is flashed off, we'll go ahead and slide that on the barrel and show you what the dimple looks like through the set screw holes. All right, we've got the camera over here. looking straight down at the dimple we just made in our barrel. The gas block, you know, depending on what you're doing, you can install the gas tube. Now you can do it post, depends on, you know, what fixtures you have, your method, certain rails. You know, you're not going to have, if you're doing like a URX 3.1 from KAC, you're not going to have much access to that, if all, to install the gas block or gas tube post gas block install. So you're going to have to assemble this first, then slide it onto the upper. Some guys do that anyway, even if you have a rail like this Hodge, it'll slide over the whole thing. But just because we're doing a gas block video, I'm not going to put the tube in it right now. It's a little too cumbersome and to try to video. So, but anyway, you know, make sure it's aligned properly. You got the hole in the gas block that's going to be aligned with the port. Some of these gas blocks, you know, have holes on both ends, and you know, there is some room for error there for the user to assemble things wrong. But as long as you install this thing right, you'll notice here that the let's see if we can move this. You'll notice there that dimple, that 5/32 drill bit made a fantastic size hole right there to align this gas block and get it ready for this set screw. So now that we're both degreased here, we can go ahead and take our set screw, put it on our hex key. I know you can't see this, but I don't think we need to video myself putting a set screw on a hex key. But anyway, I personally like to put the red Loctite into the hole. You don't have to pour this stuff in there. I just use a medium drop in each hole. That's all that you need. Then I run that set screw down. You should feel it, unless you've aligned it exactly right. You should feel this possibly center the block. So I'm going to move it a little off center, and as you tighten it, much like the jig, you'll see it center itself up like that. I like to take that back screw once I know the block's centered here, give it a little wiggle, tighten it down a little more, and then I don't use a hex drive on a wrench or anything. A hex key, typically the long side of it flexes before it would strip the screw out. So just tight enough until the hex key starts bending, and that's normally tight enough for the size fastener the hex key is good for. We're going to do the front one. And again, there's no dimple here. It's really not needed. Tighten that down. Alright, it's snugged up. There's no dimple there, so you don't have to feel it center itself. Again, same thing. Tighten it. Hex key starts to bend. We are snug enough.